go to the first slide and talk a bit about why we think researchers need to be hearing from you. So first of all, it doesn't take a lot of convincing to recognize, for researchers to recognize that they don't really know your perspective. They sometimes are a little arrogant and think they know your perspective because they're treating you, they're interacting with you in clinic. But when you really push them about this and say, really, do you understand the lived experience of someone going through this treatment or the survivorship path and journey that families are on or whatever, they kind of recognize that they don't. It's a hole in what they bring to the table. The next thing we learn is that they're really unsure about how to engage. So once we point to the elephant in the room and say, you really kind of don't know what patients on your research trial really are experiencing, then they're like, oh my goodness, so what do we do? I don't know how to do this. I'm trained as a bench scientist. I'm trained as an oncology nurse. I'm trained in certain fields, right? They're not trained in patient engagement. They really aren't. So when we finally point that out, they say, well, I'm unsure of where to begin. What do I do? How do I find patients? How do I talk about this? So what we've suggested is our answer to bridge this gap between their lack of understanding and all of the day-to-day lived experience you bring as a cancer survivor is to have a structured but relaxed setting for conversation about research that lets them kind of get their feet kind of a little bit wet in the waters of engagement, but in a way that's incredibly constructive. So we want them to be able to receive your feedback and listen to your questions, listen to your ideas, so that it can spark suggestions and innovations on their part. And that's the missing magic sauce. It really is. We've already seen it happen a couple of times with doing some of these rapid reactor team panels, and we'll tell you about that in a little bit. But those researchers don't know what they don't know. They don't know things that you hold close to your heart, that matter to you, that you've experienced. And when they hear them, it's almost like revelatory, right? It's a big eye-opener for them. So they do want to hear from you. Frequently, they don't know how. And so we're hoping that this team is a way to answer the how. So let's go to the next slide. So the structure is a maximum of 1 hour commitment from both the researcher and the PIVOT Reactor team members. We do it at sometimes between 5 or 6 in the evening. It's after work hours, so we hope that makes it a little bit easier for everybody to show up. We can be flexible there too if folks need to start at 6:30 because the kids need to be fed and you've got to do other things. We get it. We don't have a panel if there are fewer than 2 of the PIVOT Reactor team members available. This is not a one-on-one with you getting lectured by a researcher and then being kind of under the glare like, okay, it's all up to me, right? At least 2. We're really looking more for maybe a panel of 4 to 6. That's a nice size group to talk. Depending on the interest, for breast cancer, we might have 20 people raise their hand and want to be part of it. For rectal cancer, we may have a smaller group because of the smaller lived experience, right? So depending on the cancer topic and on your personal interest and how much you want to spread into other areas, there may be a variety of numbers of folks who participate. But ideally, it's a small group conversation. To remunerate you for your time, because this is time above and beyond anything else we've asked for, we offer a $25 gift card for participating on the Reactor group, and that's whether you say nothing or if you hog the stage, doesn't matter. We're facilitating, so we won't let anybody truly hog the stage, but it's for your participation and even for your just head nodding. Like maybe it's great and you love everything about it, just you've given your thumbs up is very, very valuable to the researcher. It's not just to look for problems. It's not, you're not the investigator saying, well, I don't know about the sample size. We're not talking about that. We're talking about other broader aspects of the study, and we'll talk about what those are. But I did want to let you know that we do pay you for your time. how does it help? Well, first, we think that having you at the table helps increase the relevance of the study to patients and communities who care about that cancer. We find often that researchers can go down their own paths, right? They're chasing all sorts of interesting rabbit holes, but it may not be the most important priorities that you have as someone who's lived with this experience. So what we find is this really special spot, which is it's almost like the flight attendant, the doors aren't that way. Like you can help direct or redirect or emphasize and elevate particular aspects of a study because they're important to you. You're like, I'm not so wild about that aspect of it, but I think this part is super, super important. Right? Just kind of changing the lens, changing the amount of light you're shedding on a topic is really important. It gives researchers an access to diverse patient populations. So we don't always have, it's a breast cancer study, so we only have breast cancer patients sitting at the table. Or it's only this, so only that, right? Your lived experience can inform a variety of issues beyond just the specific cancer itself. And PIVOT, we hope, is going to be seen by the researchers as this really rich resource of patients with all of this different kind of experience. Living in a rural community like Julie does and trying to deal with her pathway and her survivorship goals, right? Where she doesn't have the cancer center and all of this nearby. That's an important population that we often don't get a chance to connect with. But by having Julie, for example, on our team, we now have someone who lives in a rural community to speak to those issues. The third thing is the influencing the priority of different research topics. This is kind of the first point I made, but sometimes researchers are interested, it's like a kid in a candy shop. They're interested in 3 things, like those are their 3 things. You can help identify which of those priorities really you think they should focus on. And that helps them a lot. It's like trying to love all your kids the same today. Sometimes one needs a little more attention. Sometimes one needs, if you hear from that one, maybe it draws more attention to thinking about solutions in that area. Let's go to the next slide. It generates ideas. You guys have amazing ideas for how to generate enthusiasm and interest in cancer research. Like you're already part of the choir, you're singing the song. You care about research, you understand what it can do to promote wellness and improve care for patients. You get that it pays forward by being involved in research. It's not about you, it's about care for future patients and their families. So you've got ideas for how to hook other people, right? Hook, it sounds like like at a circus where I'm trying to get you into a particular side thing. But you know what I mean? You can say, well, women like me, men like me, patients like me, urban city folks like me, rural city folks like me, boy, the thing that would make a difference for me showing up would be fill in that blank. You're going to know that answer. And the researcher doesn't because they're not living in those communities. And quite frankly, they spend a whole lot of time spinning their wheels, not knowing how to engage the African American community, not knowing how much of what they do has to be translated into another language, for example, to be able to reach a particular community. You guys can, with a snap, help them figure that out. You also, not only recruiting patients for a study, like how do we make the study more clear so that folks understand what they're being asked to do as part of research, you can give them ideas on how to keep those individuals. This is the #1 marketing challenge for clinical trials research. I might attract you in the front door and it sounds okay and you kind of like it, but 2 months in and you're having to come back to the center for another blood draw and something else, all of a sudden your life gets a little more important, and taking that extra trip to the center and fighting with parking and all that stuff, you're like, today, not so much. Maybe I'm not going to do it. Dropout is a huge problem. I can't overstate how important dropout is. And you all know that to be able to make conclusive findings from research, you have to have enough sample size, right? You have to have enough people experiencing that study to be able to say something about it. So when people drop out, think about what it does. It prolongs the study, right? So now instead of taking that 6 months to get everybody in the study, now it takes 12, 18, 24 months. People who were in the first 6 months who participated are like, hello, where are the results? Well, there aren't any because they haven't accumulated enough data to close the trial. So it's really, it undermines our early adopters because they're feeling like, what the heck did I do that for if I'm still waiting to hear whether, I got the placebo, whether it worked or it didn't work. And at the same time, it draws out horrible delays on the research team. So it's money going out the door, it's staffing. You can't say, can I just pay for like a third of a nurse today because only a third of the patients showed up? You still have to pay for them, right? So this idea of how to retain folks, what are the incentives that would keep you in a study? That's literally gold to a researcher, and you guys can come up with those ideas. And then there's always this cool thing called unexpected insight. Like, who knew that you had this great idea about, using a particular, say, social media platform to reach a rare group of cancer patients because it's one that you happen to like and you use. We didn't know about it. There's so many things that your experience brings that the researcher can't possibly anticipate. When we get these conversations going, we have found every single time to get some really unanticipated information that's been super, super helpful. Okay, let's go on. We want to make sure you also understand that the Rapid Reactor team can work at any point along the continuum of research. So ideally, what we want is when that researcher is first formulating their ideas, getting their hypotheses together, figuring out what their aims are going to be, what their funding is going to look like, kind of what they're exactly building for their experiment or their study. We want them way up front to be listening and talking with you. That's ideal. And we all know the world doesn't work with ideal. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we find them farther down the road. We find them closer to the, oh my goodness, I need some patient input and it's due next week. We really don't like that. Because it's like, could you find me the patient? It's very disingenuous and sort of demeaning to your engagement as patient leaders to say, could you just slap together a letter and here, could you just sign that? I need to get my grant in. We won't do that. But they may have already been funded or there's an evolution of their research project and their light bulbs are going on because we keep trying to flip the switch to make those light bulbs go on about how important patients are to the work. And they may be somebody who's got quite a body of research and says, I could do this patient panel thing. I'd like to get more patients involved. I've kind of always thought that was missing, right? So they're way farther down the road, but say, we are struggling with our retention. And I'm up for talking to patients to see whether or not we can come up with other solutions. So they may be farther along the full range of research. It's not always the little bunny wagging their tail just ready to get started with a project. It might be somebody much farther along who has a light bulb moment and meets somebody like Kim, like Dan Dixon did, and their whole view of the research that they do at the bench has been influenced by having a patient ask all the kinds of questions you've asked him. So, and you ask a lot of them, which is great. It can also happen at the very end, like maybe we totally missed the bus and the research is already done and we're summarizing the study, but we do want to get it into the community, right? How would they do that? So you might be able to help them like, I don't understand any of this mumbo jumbo. What does this table even mean? Is it good that the number goes up versus going down? Interpreting the data, helping them understand how to present it in a non-researcher, non-technical way is something you all can certainly have an opinion about. Okay, next slide. So we hold these both in person and using Zoom. There's Kim right there in the corner, and Julie, we see a picture of you even though it's not a live picture of you. We hold the sessions in person and by Zoom. Video conferencing really, really helps. So it's just like today. If I can't see Julie's face, I can't see her making a face or looking curious or raising her hand, right? It's way more interactive when we could at least virtually be in the same room with video conference. So we really prefer that way. You can stay at home and do it on your own computer. It's not like you have to go anywhere, but having a camera on your computer and being able to zoom in is really helpful. If you can't, joining us by phone is fine, and we facilitate. And remember that there are folks on the phone, so we can pause and ask for the phone folks to weigh in as well. You've all been on this before. If somebody's on the phone, it's easy to forget they're there, right? Because they're not there. But we make sure that we include everybody. Okay, let me pause there. Pace okay, content, any questions so far? Good, okay.
No, it was just funny. You made me think of researcher as a little bunny, and that made me tickle.
A little bunny. Well, they are just like cute little bunnies when they're young and fresh and ready to go. I think I'm just waiting for Easter, and I've seen too many camping ads. So here's the big ask. What do we expect from you as a PIVOT Rapid Reactor team member? Well, first, if you feel like you need some help in some aspects of research or what you bring to the table, we've got leadership that can mentor you. So we're not throwing you into the deep end of the pool. If you want a chance to be mentored or to just listen in and not participate, just to kind of get a sense and feel for what it's like, it's totally up to you. We need you to have a desire to learn about research and provide your opinions. We need opinionated people. And you're all laughing because I guess you think maybe that's you. We need you to have opinions. We really do. If everybody's like, well, whatever my doctor says is fine, and I don't want to make any waves, and there's some people who really do give over their trust and their experience in a way. And I'm not judging that. I totally understand how vulnerable people are going through this process. But many of you are survivors, or you've been through your own journeys and have built some confidence. We want to continue to build that confidence, but we want to bring your ideas about research and your opinions to the table. Even if you think they're kind of goofy, like there's nothing goofy, there's nothing off the table. If you say like, this might be a really goofy thing to do, but have you thought about including, like a free iPad for folks as an incentive, right? Like you could just throw the idea out. That's fine. We want you to have ideas and opinions. You need to have good listening and verbal communication skills. So far, your listening is excellent. But you have to listen to the researcher. You have to really drive your verbal skills as well to make your points clearly. And I'd say another part of how we facilitate this is if the researcher's kind of going off the rails, getting really technobabble, we will reel them in and make them sort of restate, refocus, use living room, plain language so we all can understand. They get that that's the way we roll. And so if they get too far off, typically Hope or I will pull them back in. Whoever the research lead is from PIVOT will help reel that researcher back in. By the same token, if you decide to go back to when you were in 3rd grade and you'd like to tell us about your teacher who really made a big impression on you and influenced your view about health, I'm probably going to reel you in. Because that's a great little story, but we have an hour. And so this is not a platform for you to tell us every aspect of your lives either. You only communicate and share to the level that you're comfortable, and we want everybody to be engaged. And then obviously we want to listen to and be willing to share that lived experience to say, look, I'm going to make this personal. For me, this was an issue when I was in a research study, or this is a concern I have. You have not addressed this community of vulnerable Kansans or folks in the metro. What are you going to do about it, right? You need to share that lived experience as well. And for those of you who were at our training, this was our training list of words that we thought were important. Great, let's go on. So how will you be selected to participate? Here's the deal, and maybe Sarah, if you'd like to talk about this, it'd be great, just to talk about your process.
Sure, yeah. So we get requests from researchers. They'll go ahead and email me, and I kind of will get the background information on what they need, what kind of the study's going to be about, what kind of participants they're looking to hear from. So I will send you guys all of that information through an email. Now, if I get 20 emails back that say I want to participate and we don't have the room for that or the capability to take y'all on board, then we'll kind of just say, all right, these 5 are going to do it this time, but absolutely next time you guys are going to kind of take over. But once we select those people who are going to attend the session, we'll give them a calendar invite, and then we ask the researcher to provide us with we have slide decks that you guys will see here, but we will pass those slides out to you so you can kind of prepare for it if you want, just to kind of look things over and know what they're going to discuss. And then, yeah, so if you guys have any questions or you're like, I don't know if I feel comfortable on this topic, can I get some more information about it, just email me and I'd be happy to explain and kind of, maybe if there's questions even before that you're looking at the slides, like none of this makes sense, we're going to have to go back and say, you need to put this in different language, or let's clear some things up before we come to this group.
Great. And as I said, ideally we want, 4 to 8, 5 to 9, a fairly small group. Those are sort of the ideal numbers for a small focus group kind of discussion. But we can certainly have additional folks. So we don't want to make you think that it's like, hurry up and sign up, otherwise you don't get a seat. We need to be mindful of your time and energies as well. And there's opportunity to listen in to see if it's something you even want to do before you make any sort of big commitment. Okay, Sarah, let's go on. So as Sarah mentioned, the researcher will give a 10-minute presentation. Now, this is like squeezing water out of a rock for some of them. We have learned that we have to be absolutely like locked to the 10-minute time, otherwise we will be there for 2 hours. You give a research an inch and they'll take an hour to explain it. So we are very specific, and we coach the researchers just like we're coaching you guys about kind of how we're bringing these two pieces together. They have to have a specific request that comes through Sarah to begin with, to say, okay, I'm struggling with recruitment. I'm coming for a recruitment issue. Here's the trial. Here's where I am. So they've got to pass muster to come to Pivot to begin with for this experience. So they have to describe that specific ask. We coach them to use plain language, that they're not allowed to, talk slowly and loudly. They're supposed to just talk, which is, if it's still techno talk, it doesn't help that you're saying it slowly and loudly, right? I still don't get what the heck that word means. So we really focus on them using plain language and avoiding acronyms, which they use all the time, and then jargon, which they're like, oh, well, my NIH, IC said blah, blah, blah. You're like, what is that alphabet soup? Right? It's like when you join the Army. I don't know if anybody's military, but all of a sudden you're speaking letters, you don't speak words. After the presentation, the researcher hears your reaction and is ready to respond to questions too. So typically we give them 10 minutes on their platform to go through their slides, which we'll show you. And then you can be ready to, let's go back to slide number 2. I had a question on this, or let's talk about issue X, right? So we give them a chance to present and then we react. Next slide. So these are the slides. Don't worry about any of the detail below, just so you can see how we're guiding what they're presenting to you. The first is just a brief statement that describes the research, why is it meaningful, and what the researcher team requests from Pivot. Okay, you'd think this would be pretty easy. Researchers have a really hard time sometimes with the parenthesis. Why is it meaningful to cancer research and patients? And patients. We didn't say or, we said and. So typically they're really great at telling you why it's meaningful for cancer research, about why this is a missing piece of the puzzle for how mitochondrial DNA impacts blah, 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 right? But we're like, okay, at the end of the day, why should a patient care about that? We get pauses. So it's really, sometimes really challenging for them to take their research and pull it all the way through to patient experience. So this is a tough slide, and often Sarah has to tell them to go back and try again. Let's look at slide number 2.
Okay.
Slide 2 is be specific about your ask and when you need additional and when you need any additional input. So what is it you're specifically asking for? Like if it might be, oh, you guys are all interested in this. Would you be willing to be on an advisory panel if I get funded? Like anybody, raise your hand. Like they might be looking for volunteers to be on a advisory board. They might ask if you would be a member of the research team. And, you know, could they buy some of your time to be an actual key personnel or co-investigator with them? They may just want to come back to you as a group after they've heard your input, they've redesigned their newsletter, and they want to come back and just have you take a look based on whether they've been responsive to your feedback. So they have to be specific so that you know kind of what you're getting into if you do raise your hand in the group. Let's go on to the next one. The third slide is what they need going forward. So is there going to be an additional request to the whole group? Do they need a letter of support? This is really big. So those little bunnies, right, when they're wagging their tails and getting ready to put their grants in, frequently they need a letter of support. And we've made it a policy for PIVOT that we won't just sign a blank form letter saying, you have the support of the PIVOT research advocate team from KU Cancer Center. We expect them to do more. We expect them to actually engage with us. And so if they need a letter of support, if they're far enough, if they're early enough before their submission dates, that's great. They come to the Rapid Reactor panel, and after the panel, you who participate in the panel will actually vote on whether or not they've met your criteria for being responsive to your ideas, and if you support giving them a letter of support. So if you say yes, then we'll take it from there. But if you say, I think they missed the point and they were a little obnoxious about it and continue to try to convince me that I was wrong about my perspective, I'm not in favor. That's totally legitimate as well.
And that letter of support comes from the PIVOT group and like one of you two or Hope or something?
It comes from Hope and Cheryl Jernigan.
Okay.
So as our sort of
it's like,
signature block,
you're not doing
No. Now, a researcher may, for a certain kind of funded project, they may actually want like a testimonial letter. So we have, you know, if you're a, you know, you've done this before. Kim, you want to talk a little bit about your being asked for a letter?
Yes. So because I am I have a non-for-profit African American Breast Cancer Survivorship Organization. So they also asked for a letter of support from my organization. So Sarah, I believe, I'm almost certain Sarah typed that up, or Cheryl. Yeah, Hope, Cheryl, one of the two, they typed it up and then forwarded it over to my secretary, vice president, and so we then put our John Henry on it as a letter of support after we had the Rapid Reactor team session and after we all agreed that we thought it was a thing that we felt comfortable with the researcher and the presentation and what he said, what they said, and what their goal is, and so we're still working on that because that's Jill's, I think.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, it might be an organization. Kim's unique because she has her own nonprofit organization as well. Some of you might as well. There's no expectation that, you know, as goes PIVOT, so does your organization. You know, these are independent decisions of support. Some may actually want a testimonial from, triple negative patient survivors. And so if you're in that group and you say, this is my lived experience, that's a very powerful contribution to the grant package. Reviewers look at those, honestly. Now, they don't look at them if all of them say, I support this research, and they sign Joy. I support this research, and it's just the same letter with a different name. That doesn't do you any good. But if it's a genuine personal letter, because it's your focus, it's your cancer, it's your experience, sometimes that's another ask that they can make. You're not obligated at all. If you do say yes, as Kim did, we'll help you with crafting that letter. So not everyone's cookie cutter, but we'll help you with like the framework that you can then edit to make it sound like you and to personalize it if it's something you'd like our help with. We ask them too if there's ongoing input from an individual patient research advocate or advocates. This is the long-term, like, now that I've met you, I love you. Can I write you on my team? We want to be sure that we're clear about that, and also that you're not feeling any pressure to say yes. But you know, it might be a great match, and we don't want to get in the way of that kind of matchmaking either. Okay, let's go on. So after that 10-minute presentation or so, we've got about 45 minutes to react. And we typically ask you to think about these kinds of things while the presentation is going on. So is it relevant? Do you have some specific concerns? Here's a great one. What would you change? Like if you could redesign something, what would you change? And you'd say, well, why the heck did you put the ceiling of only women 50 and older on this study? Or, you know, that didn't make sense to me, right? Think about what would you change? Maybe it's the age range. Maybe it's a target. Maybe it's, Cheryl always likes to bring this one up, you know, if it's asking for you know, 24-hour urine collection. Could you live without 24 hours of my pee? Because that's kind of a hard thing to give you. So could we just do 2 or 3 samples instead of a 24-hour? Or a blood draw. You know, could you maybe take another purple vial while you're doing something else during my regular checkups instead of making me come in separately for a blood draw? There are things you can change because it's going to be more convenient. It's more kind of saleable. Does that sound right? I mean, maybe it sounds like I've got a product here, but I can sell you on saying yes to being in my research project if I can say, look, I'm going to make this as easy peasy as I can. You'll already be here. There's childcare, there's snacks, we're going to pay you, we're not going to stick you twice. You know, those kinds of things could really help make a difference in getting you to say yes, right? And then respecting that yes and continuing to provide you support throughout your journey in the trial is something we're coaching the researchers on doing and thinking about as well. Do you need more clarification? Maybe there still wasn't enough information there in that 10 minutes, so you can ask questions. And is it just hard to understand? Like if you're really like, you've read it twice, you saw the slides, you're listening for 10 minutes and you're leaning in going, what the heck? I still don't get it. That's really, really important. So if you're still struggling at the end of those 10 minutes, again, we need your opinion. We need to say, look, I'm still struggling to figure out why the heck you're even doing this. You just finished telling me that there's all this evidence already that drug X works really well. Why are you doing another study? I don't get it. Like the I don't get it moments are really super, super important. So if it's hard to understand or an I don't get it moment, this is a time for that group to talk. And the researcher doesn't get to talk you back down. Like, well, of course it's important. You know, it's like the old Saturday Night Live thing where, Jane, you ignorant slut. Remember that? There is no Jane, you ignorant slut to this. I should come up with a better example. Do you remember that with Jim Chase? Yeah. There will be none of that back and forth, like, well, let me again talk loudly and slowly. No, if you don't get it, you don't get it. We're done with that point, right? So the researcher has to go back and retool. So this is the content of the conversation. We'll guide it, but not drive it. We will guide it, but not drive it. You drive the questions and the comments, okay? And then we're done. So you're the expert. Your voice can influence future research. We absolutely 100% support always asking questions for things that you don't understand. That I don't get it, I don't understand is so critical to say out loud. Because we guarantee, first of all, you're not the only one who doesn't get it and sitting in that room, but it is something that's very important for us to hear and for the researcher to hear. And we really want this to be designed as a great learning opportunity for both the researchers to get this fresh new view, but also for you to be able to feel that you're contributing in a really novel way that you haven't had a chance before to do in driving the research that happens at KU Cancer Center. So that's the pitch for the Rapid Reactor team. There's us being goofy. Some Some of you will see yourselves in that picture.
Wearing the same thing.
What a great day. We were so thankful to have such a great participation by the group, and it's fun looking goofy. But this is kind of our next step to grow Pivot, and at this point, it's open to you for the last 15 minutes to ask questions, react to the reactor idea, and give us any thoughts. So before anybody in the room talks, I want to go to the folks who are on the phone and ask for their input first. Let's go around that list if we could, Sarah.
Okay. Let's start with Chris. Do you have anything to say? Or questions?
No, I have no questions. I've been fortunate to be actually participate on a rapid reactor team.
Yeah.
But I do love the training, Kim.
Great.
Okay, how about Ashley?
Can you guys hear me okay? I'm driving now.
Yes.
Okay.
Any questions?
So, no questions, just basically comments that I too have participated in a rapid reactor meeting before with a researcher, and I thought it went really well. Kim, I really like how you said, you know, you need to speak up when you say, you know, I just don't get this, because if you're not getting it, someone else probably isn't getting it. And if the patient isn't getting the research, then there's a problem. And that would definitely get the researchers to open their eyes and maybe make a change to their project. So that was great.
Okay, let's do Becky. Do you have any additional comments?
Can you see them back on the screen too?
Yeah, let's do that, sorry.
Here's Becky.
So participated in a rapid reactor, and I think, like you have said, that you don't have to worry about, you don't know what to say, or you're not, you know, have enough experience talking to researchers, because they want to hear what normal people have to say. So don't have to worry about that, and just give your experience.
Okay, how about Julie? Do you have any questions or comments?
No, everything sounded great.
Great. And Karen?
I look forward to meeting with the researchers. I fit the criteria. I'm opinionated. I'm certainly I'm willing to share my experiences. So yeah, I look forward to it.
Awesome. Great. All right, so let's Hope, do you have anything to say?
The only thing I would say is I laughed, Kim, actually two things. I laughed, Kim, when you said they speak louder and slower. They also often say the same words over and over and over again. And so when that happens, right. If I say it one more time, maybe you will get it. So that's the other thing that we try to clarify. And then on the other side, on you all's experience, I would also really say that we really value your ability when you're connected to other patients too, because many of you are not just connected to your own cancer experience. You're really connected to everyone you've ever told that you've had cancer, because then they tell you their cancer story, right? And so you're giving a collective cancer experience. And I think that always keeping that in mind, that this is my individual experience, but let me think about some of the other things that I have heard from people and share that as well.
Great. Comments around the table, questions, ideas. One, before you jump in, the colored handout that has Kim's lovely picture with Dan Dixon pointing at something. I don't know what he's pointing at. You're not looking at what he's pointing at. They're like done with whatever that is.
Looks
I
pretty.
don't know how they chose that shot. I
Yeah.
think they wanted us to look at the picture, but they wanted us to look like we were really doing something. I'm like, okay, we can't do both.
Can't do
Yeah,
both.
can't do both.
Yeah, well, this is the flyer that we have out to try to attract researchers. So this is our attempt to let them know that we're out here, we're waiting for their call for help and how to get a hold of Sarah and schedule one of these. So we're really kind of pushing two things at once. We're looking for more volunteers from PIVOT to be part of our rapid reactor team, but we're also pushing investigators awareness that we're out here waiting for them, and all they have to do is give us a call and we'll set it up.
Are they required to have patient feedback for grant approval normally?
For some, that's a great question. For some grants, it's actually required. It's written into the guidelines that are called requests for proposals or requests for applications. They'll actually say you will be graded. You're going to be points will be awarded or taken away if you haven't done adequate patient engagement. Different funders have different expectations of what that looks like. If you're going to be funded by Komen, a very high level of expectation of engagement. For PCORI, the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute, it's required. And there's a section that you have to write about your engagement. And if you say things like, well, we'll figure that out after we're funded, you're going to be told you missed the memo. Like that doesn't work. More and more of the institutes and centers of the National Institutes of Health, which are the biggest funders, are requiring some level of engagement with, they're calling it stakeholders. So it might be clinicians, it might be research teams, it might be patients, families, but more are being influenced by this. I think it's about time that we tap what we know to be one of the most valuable resources in science, and that's people with lived experience. So it's becoming more and more common, sometimes required, sometimes just suggested. So we're not all the way there yet.
And is there a requirement for NCI designation to have something like this on board or no?
That's a great question as well. No, there isn't a requirement. And we're leading nationally with other centers. And in fact, our external advisory board came and a couple of our PIVOT members were able to be there and talk about, we talked a little bit about PIVOT. Dr. Jensen highlighted us in his unique features about the KU Cancer Center. And there are members who came from the external advisory board who said, we need this in our cancer center. And some have actually followed up asking for some of our leaders to come talk to their centers on how to get a PIVOT-like project started. So we're leading the way. There's no other cancer center that we know of that has a patient-led, patient engagement voice like PIVOT. We're unique. So we're pretty proud of that.
Yeah.
That we made it happen here.
Can I ask how it's funded? Is it through the Cancer Center or?
So Hope, do you want to talk a little bit about the support for PIVOT from the MCA and the Cancer Center? Would you do that?
Sure, I'd be happy to talk about it. So our Cancer Center director really believes in patient engagement. And so with that, he's committed to funding the structure. So half of Sarah's job is to work on PIVOT. She has another job that she wears the other hat on. So he supports her salary, and then all of you all's attendance at meetings and other things. He does that just out of the general Cancer Center budget. So he doesn't get specific funding for this, but he says it's important enough that I'm using my operational budget for this, and which I think is pretty special. What we ask our researchers to do is that if they get funded, they need to write in the patient time. So the individual researchers, the ask that we have of them is that they create a budget that supports your efforts as well. But that's for individual research projects. We do not ask the researchers to support your time during the rapid reactor time. That comes out of the general budget of the Cancer Center. And so I think and then MCA, we have funds that just our staff time and other things, or if a little extras, as the outreach network of the Cancer Center, I can use some of my own general budget for things as well. But
And
really,
what's MCA stand for?
Well, right now it stands for Midwest Cancer Alliance. Eventually, we will change our name just a bit when a donor has come in and supported us. And so that may be coming up sooner than later is why I bring that up.
Cool.
But
You
we partner
used
with
an acronym,
hospitals.
Hope, so I had to call you out.
But you know what? It's one of those acronyms that probably will hold while the words don't.
That works. That works.
I agree. We're the outreach network, though we partner with hospitals across the state of Kansas and healthcare providers to extend cancer research, professional education, and patient programming, and et cetera.
Thanks, Hope. Other questions from around the table? These are great and important for you all to know.
I was wondering how many times have you been approached by researchers, or how often do you get approached?
So we've done about 3 so far, but we kind of have 3 in the pipeline now. So this is kind of why we definitely wanted to get your guys' involvement. So we kind of, so the next one that we have is February 28th that's scheduled. And it's a really good one because it's about the informed consents at KU Cancer Center. So what you think should be included in that, what you would like to know up front. So if you guys have any interest, I'll kind of send everybody some details on that, that we're here today, and you can kind of let me know if you're interested in that one.
Yeah, so I think as a result of today, if you're interested in being part of the Rapid Reactor team, let Sarah know.
Yeah.
You can also go off and think about it, and you don't have to certainly commit right now. We'd like to grow the group of folks who are willing and able and interested. Maybe you'll do one and you won't do another one for 6 months. It could just vary. Again, no preparation. It's just you bring in your opinion, so you could drop it and come back to it at any point in time. And we want to be able to be responsive because as the research teams come in, we want to make sure we can schedule those and sort of step up to give them that dose of patient perspective. So that's why it's important for us to kind of make sure that you understand what we're asking, and if there's a way for us to pitch this in a different way that you think than we've done tonight, then let us know that as well, because we'd like to bring this to the opportunity to participate with other cancer survivors as well.
Are those live meetings, the rapid response meetings, are those on campus? Are they here? Where's the physical space that happens?
So depending on how many people are going to show, we will either do it in this room or we have a Midwest Cancer Alliance conference room.
Okay.
So the researchers come to us and then,
Yeah, they come here.
Yep.
We just need to make sure that we have.
Navigating to campus could be a challenge.
Yes, the parking's way better here.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yes, it is.
We try to get them to come.
They can get here at 5.
Yeah.
We think they should come to us.
Yeah.
But
We also always have it on Zoom.
Yeah.
Okay.
We just need the Zoom capabilities too with the camera and everything, so. Anything else? Any other parting words from anybody?
I would say this is
3
very
minutes?
relieving. This
How
was
so?
relieving to me. I always like to understand things from a larger point of view, and so I wasn't sure that I fit. I wasn't sure, as scared as I might be of a researcher, I think they might be afraid of us as well.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think you helped me to understand that it's a lot more of a level playing field than I expected it to be. So
It's good that came across, Joy, because we really are striving to make it that level field, which is why the language, the structure, all the rest, we really tried to design it so everybody just feels they're bringing themselves.
Yeah, I agree with you because I have been trying to, Cheryl had been talking to me about this before it was even started. And I just kept telling her, I'm just not a science person. And I thought the goal would be that I would be reading these research papers and giving feedback. And I'm like, I'm not going to have a clue. But you pointed on a lot of things that I think that I would be a good asset and I would be helpful. And then there are other things that maybe I wouldn't be as strong at. So I agree with you that I feel like I could be a good fit where previously I wasn't quite sure. So
okay,
yeah, it's good information.
And our hope is that these sessions will help you mentor the things that you guys aren't as comfortable with. So the more you attend, the better you get at it. It's kind of just, I do better when I learn in the actual setting. So.
there's a lot
Can I ask a question? May I ask a question? I'm wondering from Joy, and I'm not sure who also said they were relieved, but I'm wondering from those who attended the December 1 training, would it have been helpful to have this session as well at that time, or does it help to have this as a second as a second training?
I think this was more clarifying
I
for
agree.
me. I think that the initial meeting, if I'm honest, I still walked away saying, what do they want from me?
Yeah, I agree.
But I also figured it's a large thing, so maybe I just didn't get it all, and I figured this would help clarify.
Yeah, I agree, because I left and I think someone was asking me, oh, how did it go? I said, well, I don't know. I liked it, and it was energetic. I liked the energy, and I liked what I learned, but I'm not really sure what I would be doing, but I want to know more.
Right.
So maybe that was the purpose, to engage us to want to know more, but this was gave me a lot more
concrete,
clarification.
yeah.
And made me feel like I would be helpful, I guess.
Good.
Where the other one, I still wasn't quite certain if I would be a good fit or be a resource to anybody.
Great.
So, but made me want to hear more.
I felt there was good information the first time. This is helpful and clarifying.
Yeah, and this is a sort of a condensed single ask that
Right.
Yeah.
maybe is a little more concrete.
I think this could scare some people right off the bat.
So maybe not, as Hope suggested, don't wrap it into a, hi, nice to meet you, can you join the club?
I would open that for discussion, how people would feel about it, but,
Okay. Well, I maintain my word and fidelity to time, and I see it's 5:30, so we are done. You're more than welcome to sit around and chat.